Hello friends, we're back for another math lesson and it's on our unit on shapes. And so if you remember that before the break, we talked about some shapes that had 4 sides and 4 vertices. They were a square and a rectangle. And I left you with the thinking question, are all squares rectangles or are all rectangles squares? Do you remember that? And so we're now into the next lesson in that unit. And this time we're going to talk about 2 other kinds of shapes. And I have a story to begin with, and you may have read it in kindergarten, but it's a great story for an introduction to our lesson today. It's called The Greedy Triangle, and it's by Marilyn Burns. The Greedy Triangle. I wonder why he was so greedy. As I read this story, I want you to look carefully for the shapes that are in these everyday places. Once there was a triangle that was, as most triangles are, always busy. The triangle spent its time holding up roofs, supporting bridges, making music in a symphony orchestra, cracking the wind for sailboats, and being slices of pie and halves of sandwiches, and much, much more. So in this picture, were you able to find the sailboat and the piece of pie and the bridge supports and the roofs of houses? The triangle's favorite thing, however, was to slip into a place when people put their hands on their hips. That way I always hear the latest news, it said, which then I can tell my friends. So try that. Put your hands on your hips and notice that it makes a triangle when you put your hands on your hips. The triangle's friends liked hearing all the news. So you can see that the triangle has lots of other friends that are shapes. One day, the triangle began to feel dissatisfied. I'm tired of the same old things, it grumbled. There must be more to life. So the triangle went to see the local shapeshifter. How may I help you, the shapeshifter asked the triangle. Well, I think if I had just one more side and one more angle, said the triangle, my life would be a little more interesting. Well, that's easy to do, said the shapeshifter. So in triangle goes. Poof! The shapeshifter turned the triangle into a quadrilateral, right? Quad means four-sided shape. And a four-sided shape is a square, right? Life changed in a wonderful way. The quadrilateral was happy with all the new things it could do. The quadrilateral could be a baseball diamond, or first or second or third base. It could take a position on a checkerboard or a chessboard. It could be a television screen or a computer screen. It could be a movie screen. It could frame windows or pictures and oh, so much more. The favorite thing of the quadrilateral, however, was to be the pages of a book. Oh, I learned so many interesting stories that way, it said, which I can then tell my friends. And the quadrilateral's friends liked hearing those stories. Well, what do you think happens after a while? After a while, quadrilateral began to feel dissatisfied. I'm tired of doing the same old things, it grumbled. There must be more to life. So the quadrilateral went back to the shapeshifter. How may I help you now? The shapeshifter asked. Well, I think if I had just one more side and one more angle, said the quadrilateral, my life would be even more interesting. Well, that's easy to do, said the shapeshifter. Poof! The shapeshifter turned the quadrilateral into a pentagon. Pentagon. Life changed in a wonderful way because the pentagon was happy with all the new things it could do. It could be a baseball diamond. It could be home plate. It could be the section of a soccer ball. Or it could appear in the center of a 5-pointed star. The Pentagon's favorite thing, however, was to be the headquarters of the United States military near Washington, D.C. I hear all the top secrets that way, it said. Too bad, though, I can't tell them to my friends. The Pentagon's friends couldn't help but feel left out now. Top secret, right? And so in just a little bit of time, the Pentagon noticed that time passed very slowly, and it became more and more dissatisfied. Tired of doing the same old things, it said. There must be more to life. So the Pentagon went back to the shapeshifter. So you're here again, the shapeshifter said to the Pentagon. Now, what would you like to be? Well, I think if I had one more side and one more angle, said the Pentagon, my life would be a little more interesting. Easy enough to do, said the shapeshifter. Poof. The Pentagon turned into a... See this shape a little better? The Pentagon turned into a hexagon. Oh, I'll bet it was really interesting now being a hexagon. Life changed in a wonderful way. The hexagon was happy with all the new things that it could do. The hexagon could fit as floor tiles in houses and patios, and could be fancy crackers at parties and picnics. It could work into the socket of certain bolts and the prongs of certain wrenches. The hexagon's favorite thing, however, was to be the cell in a beehive. I love watching the bees as they buzz in and out. The hexagon spent so much time in the beehive that it was too busy to talk to his friends, and the friends missed the hexagon, and boy, they couldn't help but feel ignored. Again and again, the shape became restless and dissatisfied and unhappy with its life, and again, it would return back to the shapeshifter for more sides and more angles. And the shapeshifter agreed to turn it into one shape after another. It turned from a hexagon to a heptagon to an octagon to a nonagon to a decagon, and on and on and on. And finally, the shape had so many sides and so many angles, its sides were so small that it had trouble keeping its balance. Its friends couldn't tell which side was on, and they began to avoid the shape. One day, when things were going pretty downhill, it began to roll. Faster and faster it went, screeching around corners, crashing into fences and trees, colliding into bicycles and terrifying walkers. And at last, the shape came to a stop. It felt tired, dizzy, lonely, and sad. Enough, thought the shape. I don't know which side is up. I can't keep my balance. My friends don't want me around. The shape could no longer remember why it had been so unhappy as a triangle, and very carefully it made its way back to the shapeshifter. Aren't you happy yet? The shapeshifter asked. I want to be a triangle again, said the shape. I'm not surprised, said the shapeshifter. Poof, the shapeshifter turned the shape back into a triangle. The triangle was delighted to have its old shape back again and kept itself very busy. Again, it was holding up roofs of houses, supporting bridges, making music in symphony orchestras, catching the wind for sailboats, and becoming slices of pie and halves of sandwiches, and much, much more. Still, the triangle's favorite thing to do was to slip into the place when people put their hands on their hips. That way, I always hear the latest news, it said, which I can tell my friends. Its friends liked hearing the news and were glad the triangle was back in shape again. And so, just a short story to introduce one of the shapes that we're going to be talking about today in today's lessons. So, let's review what a triangle is, right? A triangle is something that has 3 sides and 3 vertices, 3 corners, right? And the other shape that we're going to talk about today is a trapezoid. A trapezoid is 4 sides and 4 vertices. 4 sides and 4 vertices in a trapezoid. I wonder how many triangles it would take to make a trapezoid. A thinking question. But as we go on with our lesson, I'd like to try a warm-up. Besides just that thinking question I gave you. So let's try a warm-up. Our first warm-up says that Billy went to the park because, again, he had to stay home as well, but every day he would walk to the park. And when he walked to the park the first day, on Monday, he was trying to add to his rock collection. And wow, you know, he found this perfect spot. I don't know if you've ever been to Blue Slide, and you go down by the stream. Wonderful spot down there by the stream. And he found, down at the stream, he found 19 igneous rocks. So he found 19 igneous rocks. I don't know if you can see that. Let me move it over a little bit. He found 19 igneous rocks. That's what he found on Monday. And on Tuesday, he went again, and he found 21 sedimentary rocks. 21 sedimentary rocks on Tuesday. And he went back again on Wednesday, and he found 13 metamorphic rocks. So I could ask a number of questions. What type of rock did he find the least amount of? And which rock did he find the most of? And what is the difference between the most rocks he found and the least amount of rocks he found? So think about those for warm-up, and you can finish practicing that on your paper at home. I'll leave that there while we continue with our lesson on triangles and trapezoids. So again, I want to go back to our pictures of triangles and trapezoids, and I want you to think about this when you look at them. I know in your toolbox, in your toolkit that you took home, we took home some pattern blocks. And if you need to take out your triangle and your trapezoid, you can, so that you can have an easy reference. And I want you to notice, very importantly though, about both of these shapes, that they must be closed, right? For a two-dimensional shape, they must stay closed. And they both have straight lines. Do you notice that? That's a little bit how they are the same. But how would you categorize them as being different? What is different about these two things, these two shapes? Well, I like that I heard someone say, well, they're different colors. They definitely are different colors. What about size? Are they about the same size, do you think? On this papers they are, but what about from your toolkit? Is your triangle the same size as your trapezoid? Look carefully in your toolkit for those shapes and see if you can answer that question. When you're finished with today's lesson, I have included a few extra activities at the end that you can practice with triangles and trapezoids. And don't forget to do your homework page that's included with this lesson as well. So we'll see you again for another lesson on shapes when I see you again. Until then, stay well.